Hello students, this is another lesson of our English 4 summer course class. And today we have one very special and interesting class. What is the objective of what we're going to do? What is the objective of this verb, object, verb lesson? Well, today we're going to learn how to use a verb pattern. What is a verb pattern? Well, remember that a pattern is something that is repeated. In the case of grammar, a pattern is a grammar structure that dictates which verbs are followed by an object. It can be an object pronoun in a base form of a verb, and which verbs are followed by an object. It can be an object pronoun too, and an infinitive, plus a verb in the simple form. So, what is the idea of today? What is the objective of today? Today, you're going to learn to identify and use this verb object verb pattern or this verb object verb structure. It might seem a little difficult, but it's actually not. It's actually very simple. We're going to use 8 verbs and 2 different patterns. So, let's see what we're talking about. But before we start talking about the verb, object, verb, we're going to review the parts of the sentence. So let's go with the first part. Do you remember what nouns are? Well, a noun is a word in English that is used to refer to people, person, things, or animals. Those are nouns. So let's see which ones are the nouns in this sentence. In the first sentence, I love Juan. The noun is Juan. In the second sentence, Juan likes Andrea. The nouns are Juan and Andrea. In the third sentence, Andrea, Tim, and Charles are the nouns. In the next sentence, Tim and Charles invited the teacher and I. The nouns are Tim, Charles, teacher. In the next sentence, the teacher and I talked to my mother. The nouns are teacher and mother. In the next sentence, my mother called Susan and Diana. The nouns are mother, Susan, and Diana. And in the last sentence, Susan and Diana bought a puppy. The nouns are Susan, Diana, and puppy. So remember, the nouns are words we use to refer to people, animals, or the things in a sentence. Right? That is the first review. Let's see the sentences again, and let's say which ones are the subject of the verb. In the first sentence, the subject of the verb is I. In the second, Juan likes Andrea, the subject is Juan. In the third sentence, the subject of the verb is Andrea. In the next sentence, Tim and Charles are the subjects of the verb invited. The teacher and I talked to my mother while the subject of the sentence is the teacher. My mother called Susan and Diana while the subject of the sentence is my mother. Susan and Diana are the subject of the last sentence because they are the ones that are doing the action. Remember, the subject of the verb in a sentence is the doer of the action, is the person or the thing that is doing the action in the verb. So, this is basic review. These are the subjects of the verb. Now, let's identify the verbs. In the first sentence, I love Juan, the verb is love. In the second sentence, Juan likes Andrea. The verb is likes. In the next sentence, Andrea adores Tim and Charles. The verb is adores. And Tim and Charles invited the teacher and I. In this case, the verb is invited. And the teacher and I talked to my mother. The verb is talked. My mother called Susan and Diana. The verb is called. And Susan and Diana bought a puppy. The verb is bought. So in the first sentence, I love Juan. Which one is the object of the verb? The object of the verb is Juan. Juan likes Andrea. Which one is the object of the verb? Andrea. Andrea adores Teams and Charles. Which one is the object of the verb? Teams and Charles. Teams and Charles invited the teacher and I. Which one is the object of the verb? Well, the object of the verb invited is the teacher and I. They are the objects of the action in the verb. In the next sentence, my mother is the object of the verb. Talk and the preposition to. Who did I talk to? My mother. My mother called Susan and Diana. The object of the verb is Susan and Diana. Susan and Diana bought a puppy. Which one is the verb object of the verb buy or bought in the past? Well, a puppy. Remember, the object of the verb is the object of the action in the sentence. Do you remember, this is really important because this is one of the bases of this lesson is, do you remember which ones are the subject pronouns? Well, let's go back here. We have the subjects of the verbs. In this case, the subjects of the verbs are I, Juan, Andrea, Tim, and Charles, the teacher, my mother, Susan, and Diana. The subject pronouns are some words we can use to replace the nouns. We use subject pronouns to replace the nouns in a sentence. Well, in the first sentence, I love Juan, the subject of the sentence is I. But I is the subject pronoun. But let's see with sentence number 2. Juan likes Andrea. Which one is the subject of the sentence? The subject of the sentence is Juan, but Juan is a noun. And we use the subject pronoun to replace the nouns. Or we use the nouns to replace the subject pronouns in a sentence. So in this case, the noun is Juan, but the subject pronoun is he. Andrea adores Teams and Charles. The subject of the sentence is Andrea. And we use the subject pronouns to replace Andrea. The subject pronoun that replaces Andrea is she. The subject of the next sentence is Tim and Charles. What is the subject pronouns we use to replace Tim and Charles? Where is they? In the next sentence, which one is the subject? The teacher and I talk to my mother. The subject of the sentence is the teacher and I. And the subject pronoun we use to replace the teacher and I is we. Let's see the next sentence. My mother called Susan and Diana. Which one is the subject of the sentence? The subject of the sentence is my mother. Which one is the subject pronoun that replaces my mother? She. In the next sentence, which one is the subject of the sentence? Susan and Diana bought a puppy. The subject is Susan and Diana. And the subject pronoun we use to replace Susan and Diana is they. So, I, you, he, she, it, we, you, and they are the subject pronouns because we use them as the subject of a sentence. Now, let's see which ones are the object pronouns. The object pronouns are also pronouns we use to replace the object of a verb when the object of a verb is a noun. Let's see the first sentence. Which one is the verb love and which one is the object of the verb? Juan. Which one is the object pronoun we use to replace Juan? Him. So I would say I love him or I love Juan. Juan likes Andrea. Which one is the verb in the sentence? Likes. And which one is the object of a verb? Andrea. Which one is the object pronouns we use to replace Andrea? Her. Juan likes Andrea is the same than Juan likes her. Andrea adores Tim and Charles. Which one is the verb? Adores. And which one is the object of the verb? Tim and Charles. So, the object pronoun we use to replace Tim and Charles is them. Tim and Charles invited the teacher and I. The verb is invited, but the object of the verb is the teacher and I, and the object pronoun we use to replace the teacher and I, which is we, is us. Let's go with the next sentence. The teacher and I talked to my mother. The verb is talked, and the object of the verb is my mother. My mother is she, so the object pronoun we use is her. The teacher and I talked to my mother is the same than the teacher and I talked to her. My mother called Susan and Diana. The verb is called, and the object of the verb is Susan and Diana. Susan and Diana is they, so the object pronoun we use is them. My mother called Susan and Diana. My mother called them. Susan and Diana bought a puppy. Puppy is an animal. It's a little dog. And a puppy is the object of the verb bought in the past. So the object pronoun we use is it. Remember, for I, the object pronoun is me. For you, the object pronoun is you. For he, the object pronoun is him. For she, the object pronoun is her. For it, the object pronoun is it. For you, the object pronoun is you. For we, the object pronoun is us. And for they, the object pronoun is them. So now we know which ones are the subject pronouns and the object pronouns. Let's continue with the structure verb, object, verb. What is the idea with this unit? That you learn in which cases you use a verb with an object or an object pronoun and then a verb. Let's see some examples. I have some sentences that I want you to see. I invited my friends to come home. I asked my mom and my dad to come for dinner. Laura told her boyfriend to call her later. My dad doesn't let Susan use his credit card. And Jason made my brother and I do his homework. Let's see how this works. Which ones are the subject of the sentence? Well, the subject of the sentences are I in the second sentence, Laura, my dad, and Jason. Which one is the verb in the sentences? Invited, asked, told, doesn't let, and made. Some of the verbs are in simple present and some of the verbs are in simple past. Now, which one is the object of the verb in the sentences? The object of the verb invited is my friends. The object of the verb asked is my mom and I. The object of the verb told was her boyfriend. The object of the verb let is Susan. And the object of the verb made is my brother and I. So in this case, which ones are the object pronouns that we can use? In the first sentence, to replace my friends, I use them. To replace my mom and dad, which are they, we use them. In this case, in the case of Laura told her boyfriend is he, so we use him. My dad doesn't let Susan. Susan is she, so the object pronoun is her. And my brother and I is we, so the object pronoun is us. Keep that in mind for the rest of the exercises. And now, please tell me, which one is the verb after the object? After my friends, I use to come. After my mom and dad, I use to come. After her boyfriend, I use to call. After Susan, I use. And after my brother and I use do. What is the difference between all these sentences? Okay, we have two possibilities. There are some verbs and objects, and then we use a verb with to. In the case of invite, we use to come. In the case of ask, we use to come. In the case of told, I use to call. Doesn't, let, or let, I use the verb in the simple form. And after make or made, I also use the verb in the simple form. So keep this in mind. Let's see these sentences and let's see what is the structure verb, object, verb. Because we have two possibilities. We can use the structure verb, object plus a verb with to, and we can use the verb, object, verb plus the simple form. I invited my friends to come. Invite my friend, which is the object, sent to come. Ask, then I have the object, my mom and dad, and then I use to come. And then I have Laura told the object, her boyfriend, and then to call. After invite, ask, and tell, we use a verb with to. And now let's see the other two examples. After let, we have the object, Susan, and we have the verb in the simple form. Jason made my brother and I do his homework. We have made, and then we have the object, my brother, and then we use the verb in the simple form. So these are the two structures you're going to learn to identify today. Remember, for this unit, we're going to use these 8 verbs that are included in the book. Let, make, have, and help. After these 4 verbs, we use the structure object plus simple form, and then we have invite, ask, tell, and remind. And after these 4 verbs, we use the structure object plus infinitive with to. So remember, after let, make, have, and help, we use the object and then the simple form. And after invite, ask, tell, and remind, we use the object plus the infinitive with to. Let's see one example and let's review some sentences. I'm going to give you a situation. This is John. John is a friend of mine and he is a very nice person. He and his girlfriend, Julie, broke up 2 weeks ago because she found a new boyfriend. Well, for many years they were happy, they loved each other, they were together, and then Julie found a new boyfriend and they broke up. John has been sad and broken-hearted since then. Well, as you know, breaking up with someone you love is a very difficult situation, and he was feeling really bad, so he decided to talk to his friends. John talked to his friends, and some of them gave him some recommendations and offered help. So I asked him these questions to know exactly what they did. What did they tell him to do? What did they ask him to do? How did they help him get better? What did they invite him to do? Where did they have him go? And what didn't they let him do? If you see these questions, if you read these questions, you will be able to identify the structure of verb, object, verb. What did they tell him to do? Ask him to do, help him get, invite him to do, have him go, let him do. So now let's see what were the answers from his friends. What did Jane tell him to do? Jane told him to go out and make some sport because she thought it was a good idea to make sports. So she told him to go out. Verb, told him is the object pronoun, and to go is the verb we use after tell. What did Susan ask him to do? Susan asked him to erase Julie from his contacts. Susan asked John to erase Julie from his contact. Take a look at the structure. Asked him to erase. How did Antoine help him get better? Antoine helped him find a new girlfriend. So help, then we use the object, and then we use verb after help in the simple form. What did Andrew invite him to do? Andrew invited him to do some yoga. Andrew invited, then we use the object, him, the object pronoun, and then after invite we use to do. Where did Leo have him go? Leo had him go to a psychologist. Leo asked him to go to a psychologist, or Leo had him go to a psychologist. Well, what didn't you let him do? I didn't let him get drunk and call Julie. So remember the structure verb, object, verb with the 8 verbs that I gave you. After told, after tell, in all the tenses, we use an object pronoun and we use to. Told him to go. Susan asked him to erase. Ask, and then the object, and then a verb with to. Help him find. After help, we use an object, and then we use a verb in the simple form. Invite him to do. After invite, we use the object pronoun, and then we use a verb with to. Him, Leo had him go. After had, we use the object pronoun and then the infinitive without to, the infinitive in the simple form. I didn't let him get drunk. Let, and then after let we use the object pronoun and then we use the verb without to. That is all from this sentence. Remember the 2 options that we have. Remember the 8 verbs that we are using and the 2 options that we have as a pattern for those 8 verbs. Thank you very much and see you in class.